So Carolyn's in here in the camper with me. She's not speaking to me right now, so I'll explain what's going on. A lot of you will not like this video, and there's just not much I can do about it, but this is just the reality of living off grid. But I hope that you will watch this video, and if you don't want to watch it, just let it play on normal speed. Let it go through the whole thing. You can go do something else for a few minutes, maybe give it a thumbs up, maybe comment. There are a lot of people who do want to watch this video. The problem is the people who don't want to watch the video shut it off a couple seconds after they realize what this video is about, and then it doesn't get promoted to anybody else. No matter what I do, it won't go. It's just funny how an off-grid audience doesn't want every aspect of living off-grid. And I've told you before, people call me a wussy, so take out the W and put a P in, and it's about a lot of different things that we do here. They seem to think that I got to do it, or I got to do it this way. My grandpa used to say, work smarter, not harder. Well, call me a wussy, because I'm smarter. So as you probably already figured out, I'm going to do some canning videos. We're going to can chicken again today, and we're going to use Tattler lids. Tattler lids is a plastic lid with an O-ring on it, or a seal gasket. It's a two-piece component. We're going to try these again today. As you may know, that I ran several tests a couple weeks ago, a week ago or so, trying to figure out how to make these work properly. They just are harder to work with than the old-fashioned metal lids, but they're a ton cheaper. Fortunately today we have plenty of room in the freezer, so if they go wrong and I can't get them to seal, maybe I'll retry them again, because you can recan, or I'll just put them in the freezer. We're also going to do chicken broth. I've already got the chicken broth in the jars. Now I'm not going to can it on video. I'm not going to show you that. It's not that big of a deal. But somebody did ask, how do you make chicken broth? Well, it's real simple. You put your chicken in the water, a pot of water, you boil it, then you take all the chicken out. There's your broth. Now, we kind of siphon it off. We use a colander to get all the particles out of it. That works pretty good. But I don't even think you really need to. Canning liquid like that does not take near as much time as canning meat. Forget what it is. I'll have to look. I always look in the instructions to see how long it takes to can something. Maybe 30 minutes compared to an hour and 15 minutes. I don't make these very hard to follow. I'll show you one time, and I assume if you've missed something, you can rewind and try it again. There's no reason to show you how to can 20 jars, put chicken in 20 jars. There's just no reason for it. As a matter of fact, my dad called me up one day and said, I really like your canning videos. It's unlikely that I ever do it, but I like them because they're short and easy to understand. Hopefully you'll understand them. Hopefully you'll try it. I think in society now where SHTF, stuff hits the fan, is such a problem. People are really concerned about it. This is a good skill to learn. Okay, so I got my jars. Make sure they're sanitized and cleaned. I have a funnel here. Funnel keeps the particles off the rim. You don't want a lot of grease and junk on that, so it'll seal real nice. Put your funnel on the jar. And just for this one, I'm going to move it here so you can see it on camera, and then I'm going to do it where I feel comfortable doing it. The next, after we get done with this, then we'll put broth in. You got to hot pack it. So you put your chicken in, then you fill it up with broth, which I'll show you here in a minute. Okay, so I got the jars filled up. Now I'm going to put broth in the jars. Now, I didn't get all the jars filled. Normally what I would try to do is I would try to spread the chicken out between the 20 jars. I have two canners. Both of them hold 10 jars each. I'm trying to get these Tattler lids to work, and one of the things that I read just recently is you have to get it filled up to this mark here. So I went ahead and filled all the jars that would hold chicken up to that line. Then I'm going to put broth up to that line and see if I have a better success rate. Logically speaking, since I've been so focused on trying to get all the jars filled, I may have been violating a rule for Tattler lids that says that you got to get it filled up, and I just wasn't. So gonna give that a try. A couple weeks ago I tried an experiment with just water, and I put the water line way down here and it didn't seal up at all. But then when I got it up here on my second try, it did much better. I'm going to fill these up with broth. So we'll just have broth in these jars, because you can't have an empty spot inside the canner. Otherwise the jars can fall over and break. Now, normally what I would do is I would take a turkey baster, and I would stick it down into the broth and suck up the broth and then put it in here. And the reason I would do that is because I was always worried about the fat floating up at the top of the broth. But since Carolyn and I have become carnivores, it's really not a big deal for us anymore. But if you're wanting to get the fat out of there, the best way to do that is to use a turkey baster and stick it down in there, because the fat floats on top. But today I'm just going to use that. Now, trying to do this on camera is going to be difficult, so bear with me. Now, you can buy these plastic pieces on Amazon. This is a little knife, and I'm going to poke it down in there to get the air bubbles out. It also has a magnet on there, so when you boil your canning lids, you can pull it out of the pan without burning yourself. But I'm using Tattler, so that doesn't work. So leave the funnel in place. That way you're not cutting up the rim of the jar. I'm trying to keep that very clean. Now this will take the bubbles out of it, and then I will check the level of the broth to see if it needs more, because I want to get it right up to that line. Okay, so I got the jars all filled up with broth. I got the 3 extra jars filled with broth, and this time we used almost all the broth. That was pretty incredible. Usually we have a ton left over. So now I got a washcloth with apple cider vinegar on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the rims of the jars to make sure there's nothing on it, grease or chicken. And so I just put it down on the counter and I just start twisting with the washcloth over the... Okay, so now I've got the broth in the jars. I've heated up my canning lids in simmering water. The Tattler lids, I'm not really sure you need to. There's no instructions to say to do it, but I don't see the harm in it. And the newer lids, they've said that you don't have to do it anymore. Again, I don't see the harm in doing it. I'm going to show you the method of doing Tattler lids versus the canning lids, because we've got metal lids in here as well that we're going to put on the broth. The reason I'm putting on the broth is it is very difficult to get Tattler lids to work with broth. It boils over too much. So I got my canning lid on it, got my ring. We're just going to give it a little twist. Not much at all, just a... And then with a Tattler lid, the whole process is a little bit more difficult. So you'll see that it's got the 2 rings here, or the 2 pieces, the ring and the lid. We're going to put it very carefully on the jar. You're going to make sure that the orange goes all the way around it. Now I'm going to do something a little experimental today. When I was testing these jars a week or 2 ago, I put a little bit of lard around the edge of the top of the lid here, because I think when you unscrew your lid, the friction of it breaks the seal. So I'm going to lube it up a little bit to hopefully keep that lid from breaking loose, if that's what's happening. But like I said, I had 100% success rate with my test, so it can't hurt to try. Now, you do these a little bit different. Your Tattler lids, you get the ring on there, and then you put your fingers on top of the lid here, and you tighten it until the jar spins. It's as tight as it goes. All the jars, got them in the canner. I also took this ring out. You can take this ring out, and I lubricated it with lard. You're supposed to use vegetable oil, but we don't have any because we don't eat vegetable oil. And now I'm going to put the lid on the canner and pull it to the flame as soon as I'm done talking to you. I'm going to wait after it starts steaming through this vent valve where the jiggler goes. It'll start steaming through that. Then you wait 10 minutes before you put the jiggler on. That way all the air is evacuated out of the canner. It's nothing but steam. Okay, so the pressure canners are now steaming. They've been steaming for over 10 minutes. I didn't show you start the steaming process, but you just start a timer when it starts steaming, and then after 10 minutes you'll put the jiggler on. Now the jiggler has different weights on it, so that's what it looks like normally, but you can take this apart and it has, so that's 5 pounds and that's 5 pounds, so that right there is 5 pounds. Put one on 10 pounds, 15 pounds. So when you're doing your canning, you need to check with your instructions to see what elevation and what weight you need. So we're at 1,000 feet, so I need all 15 pounds. So I'm going to put my jiggler on the pressure canner, and now what I'm going to do is I got to wait until it starts jiggling. Once it starts jiggling, then I can start the timer for an hour and 15 minutes, 75 minutes actually. Now you'll see that, maybe you'll see that as soon as I put the jiggler on, this tab popped up. That indicates that now it's under pressure. So while that is up, you cannot remove the lid. It'll just pop you in the face. All right, so the jigglers have been jiggling for an hour and 15 minutes, 75 minutes. So now I'm going to turn off the flame. And I'm just going to let it sit here until these little tabs that I showed you earlier, right here, once the tabs fall down, we'll take the jigglers off, and then you're supposed to let it sit there for another 10 minutes. After that 10 minutes, we'll take the lids out, take the jars out, and we'll set them on the counter. Now, as I've said in the past videos, one of the things I'm trying to do is get the Tattler lids to seal inside the canner. And the way I know that happens is if the liquid inside the jar is boiling when it comes out. Boiling temperature drops under a vacuum, and it's kind of my calculation that it will boil till 120 degrees. So boiling temperature outside of a pressure is 212, so it boils all the way down to 120. My goal is to get all the jars to boil when they come out. If they don't, then I got to tighten that ring and hoping that I can get it to seal as that vacuum draws down and cools down even more. But I really am trying to perfect the process so I don't have to do that and they just all seal, come out. That way I don't have to wait 24 hours and see if they sealed. I'll know they sealed as soon as they come out. Tabs have now dropped down. Right here you can see that has fallen down. So I'm going to take off the jigglers now, and then we'll wait 10 minutes before we take the lids off. Okay, so it's been the 10 minutes and I'm going to go ahead and take the lids off. We'll take the jars out of the canners now and hope that we have some success. Okay, so that one is boiling. I told you earlier I'd like to see it boiling. I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but it is boiling. There's just a little bit of boiling going on. So that means that one's sealed, so I'm not going to touch it. Okay, so I had 4 that weren't bubbling when they came out. That being said, when I look at the level of the broth, where it should be at the collar, it's a little low. So it may have boiled out. So I hand tighten them. Usually I get a couple more to seal up that way. It appears one of them started bubbling just a little bit after I tightened it. So fingers crossed that they'll seal. But like I said at the beginning of this video, I got room in the freezer, so if they don't seal, I can just freeze them up. We can feed them to the cat later. The cat, we feed the chicken to the cat as cat food also. So as you know, Carolyn's been sick for the last few days, so she hasn't been too motivated. She came down here and she helped me debone the chicken, but she's been pretty quiet. And you know, she's getting better. That is obvious. She's not going through these gut-wrenching pains at night when we took her to the emergency room that, what, 2 or 3 weeks ago now. So she's getting better. It looks like the holistic stuff that we're trying is working. She says she's feeling better, but it's still some long nights for her. So now I'm going to put the broth in, and if you'll click this up next box to take you to a video where I was talking about, we had a prowler here. Kept Carolyn hostage. So I hope I can inspire you to be a man. Can your food so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.